Alright, let's talk about meritocracy. Meritocracy is a bad idea, and I mean that in multiple ways. A true meritocracy is either impossible or tautological, depending on your definitions. The idea that we have a meritocracy or that we are striving towards one exacerbates inequalities in our current system. And even if it were possible to create a meritocracy, we wouldn't want one. Let's look at things in more detail. First thing we should do is define our terms. So what is a meritocracy? The definition I'm going to work with is that a meritocracy is a system in which power goes to those with merit, and I'll leave merit as a vague term for now. But I would like to point out that I do not simply mean a system where jobs are filled by those qualified to do them, unless you're talking about positions of authority. That is just a common sense thing to do. I am referring to a system where those with whatever merit is are able to gain power over others as a result. That power can take the form of money, political advantage, or higher positions in a direct command structure, but in any case, it is power over others. This means that any meritocracy is pretty much by definition hierarchical. So since I'm an anarchist, you can already determine that I'll be opposed to it. But I think we can argue against meritocracies without even really going there, at least not so explicitly. I said that a meritocracy is either impossible or tautological, and that really comes down to what the definition of merit is. Let's get the tautological definition out of the way first. If merit is defined as the ability to accrue power, then a meritocracy is just a system where those who can accrue power are the ones who do, and that is any system. Such a definition is thus useless. So what if we modify it slightly to the ability to legitimately accrue power? Now we need to figure out which ways of accruing power are legitimate and which are not. We can do that somewhat by trying to narrow down merit further. To more explicitly get rid of things like luck or willingness to act immorally, we could try defining merit as something like intelligence plus effort, as Michael Young put it in his dystopian novel, The Rise of the Meritocracy. Or we could try to define merit as some function of intrinsic qualities plus effort more generally, notwithstanding that the ability to put in effort is itself an intrinsic quality. But in any case, we run into the problem that those with the ability to accrue power and those with the ability to legitimately accrue power are not the same set, but it's always the former who do gain power. To put it another way, the idea of the meritocracy is that there is a natural hierarchy of merit. Everyone has a place in the pecking order that they belong, but then the problem is that there are those who use illegitimate means to accrue power and put themselves in a higher position than where they belong. Unfortunately, this problem is intractable because the nature of power is that it doesn't care how it was attained. So as long as there are illegitimate ways of gaining power, there will be those who get into power in those ways. The only escape is to accept any means of gaining power as being legitimate, and then your system is a meritocracy, but only tautologically so, and not by some design. But that's still all kind of theoretical and abstract. Let's talk a bit more concretely. Let's look at capitalism as it exists today. Clearly, modern capitalism is not a meritocracy, unless you believe the rich all deserve their wealth and the poor deserve their poverty, despite much of the difference being determined by birth. Nepotism is rampant, corporate greed is reaching dizzying heights, and there's a massive disconnect between the state of the economy for the wealthy and the lived experience of the economy for the non-wealthy. If that's your idea of a meritocracy, then yeah. But what if we fixed all the problems and got to a system of truly meritocratic capitalism? In this imagined system, we might use productivity as our definition of merit. The workers get paid for their input into the business, and the owners get the profits from directing the work towards the most productive ends. In this way, everyone finds their proper place in the hierarchy. In this system, what becomes of those unable or unwilling to either work or own a business? They have no power whatsoever. Worse still, because the system is a meritocracy, they have, in some sense, earned their place of powerlessness. They deserve it according to the design of the system. So to help them, would be to give them illegitimate power, to disrupt the social order. This kind of thinking is not a good recipe for a compassionate society. Who are the leaders in this system? Those with the most power would have to be those who are the most productive members of society, who are likely to be those who own businesses, especially those who own multiple large businesses, since ownership of a business is a huge boost to one's productivity. Over time, they would enact policies to further their own interests. These policies would work to unbalance the division between the owning class and the working class even more, and the meritocracy would be disturbed. If there's no other factors, the system would eventually be turned into an oligarchy of business leaders. But even if that doesn't happen, tying productivity to power so explicitly means that the society will be geared towards productivity at the expense of other factors: the climate, the mental health of the citizens, the natural resources of the society. These will suffer, as unmitigated production is the path to power, and thus the path that must be tread. Here we see more explicitly one reason why meritocracy would not be desirable, even if it were possible. Whatever you decide to use to measure merit, that measure, by being tied so directly with power, becomes the intrinsic goal of the society. This goal supersedes the goals of the individuals within the society. It forces everyone to fall in line or fall to the wayside. And the thing is, we are not just gears in a machine working towards something we might call progress. We are individual human beings with individual goals. But the idea of a meritocracy is to find a place for everyone and put them in that place, forcing them to conform to a shape decided by the society around them. It's an engineering solution to a human problem. Let's look at another potential form of meritocracy, one where anyone who is able to pass some set of requirements can become a part of the ruling class. They have something like this in China, where things are just going like really, really great. But suppose you manage to get rid of the massive problems they have in ensuring actual equality of access, ensuring the tests line up with the job of ruling, and so on. You still end up with a system where the educated rule over the uneducated. And maybe that's what you think you want, but if you think that, I urge you to get more education so you'll see that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. It'd be an aristocracy where the aristocrats have college degrees. Nothing more than that. What would the leaders of such a society be like? What would you want them to be like? I believe compassion is among the most important qualities of a good leader. But the belief that one has earned their high position, and those below have earned their low positions, is a belief that runs contrary to having compassion for those less fortunate. This is basically the point Michael Sandel makes in his book, The Tyranny of Merit. Meritocracy, or the idea that we have a meritocracy, serves to justify inequality, preventing it from being properly addressed. Can we fix this by making compassion one of the merits that we select leaders on? No. As soon as people know that compassion is the path to leadership in a meritocratic system, they will fake it to get into leadership and then forget about it once they are in that role. If we want compassionate leaders, and although I believe we should have no rulers, I believe if we have any leaders, they should be compassionate ones, then we cannot use a system of merit to decide those leaders. We need a system of consent, where those who are governed at all are only governed with their consent, a system where there are no hierarchies of control. So what do I recommend rather than a meritocracy? Personally, I think a system of unions and cooperatives would be best, so that everyone is given support through the communities they are a part of. And having an interconnected, overlapping lattice of such communities would allow for both larger scale projects and projects that are required to fulfill less common needs. Of course, that's just my opinion, and there are multiple different systems that I think would be viable, but meritocracy is not among them. Thank you so much for watching. I'd appreciate if you also like, subscribe, comment, share the video, all the normal YouTube things. Reading the great comments I get on my videos is absolutely one of the best parts of the whole process. There's so much insight and encouragement in so many of them, and I appreciate the discussions for the most part. I mean, this video itself wouldn't exist if it weren't for a debate in the comments of a previous video. But anyway, if you'd like to support the channel more directly, I also have a Patreon page at patreon.com/omniliquid that you can check out. Now, go out and make the world a better place, as I know you will.